Hello, everyone. Wow, that's really, really bright. Let's see if we can adjust this lighting a little bit. Keep trying to get enough light, and then we get too much light. So, we've had a bit of a break. I think I had started on Read the Bible with Me second time, cover to cover. When did I start? I think I started in December, and I went for like maybe 2 weeks. And then things just got kind of crazy, and I had a hard time continuing on. So I took a break and I came back, and then I think I read for like 1 or 2 days, and then I just had to stop and take another break. And it's taken a while for me to get back to it, but we're going to try again. This is Easter week. And I thought that a part of me feels like, it'd be really nice just to read maybe the Passover story and maybe the story of Jesus's death on the cross and resurrection. Maybe I'll take a break and do that on Thursday or Friday. But for right now, I'm going to pick up where I left off and jump back in again at 2 Samuel. It's kind of an awkward place to jump in, I'm not going to lie. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 Samuel? Oh, 2 Samuel. I think my Bible just flipped open to another portion. I had it, the portion I wanted. But when I stopped, I think I was just really tired and I wasn't stopping where I intended to stop. We stopped right after the death of Absalom. I'm sorry, not the death of Absalom. Absalom, David's son, who is at this point I don't know if he's a crown prince or not. That's a good question, actually. He is, right here. Oh, I've lost something. There we go. Okay. He is, I think he's presumably the next in line to the throne at this point. At some point, David makes the decision, or the Lord makes the decision through David. I'm not really clear on it. I'd have to go back and study it a little bit more. I'm not sure that the Bible even really says so in regards to how Solomon is chosen to be the next in line to the throne. But if you look at it chronologically, he jumps a bunch of other brothers that, like, biologically should be, by birthright, should be in front of him. So Absalom has killed his eldest brother um, in justice, in the lieu of his father taking steps of justice for his sister Absalom. His eldest brother has raped his sister, and so these are half brothers, half sisters. Absalom has a full sister, and she's been raped, and so he is David is a bit passive, and so a bit passive. David is very passive in terms of his family affairs and his kids in this regard, and so Absalom decides to take matters into his own hands and kills his brother. He is sent into exile. Something I hadn't picked up on before is that his exile is actually, I believe, with his grandfather. Look at my notes, refresh my memory. But I didn't pick up on that before. So his mother is the his Absalom's mother. His maternal grandfather was the king of Jeshur. His mother's name was Maacah, I think. So his maternal grandfather was the king and of another country, and so he goes off to live with his maternal grandfather in his exile, and then he's brought back. But there's a distance of time in which he's brought back, but David will not meet with him face to face. They finally have met. They've been reunited. I think things are still a little bit distant and cold between father and son. And so that's where we are at the moment, and then things are about to go downhill from there. What else do I want to say about that? I probably should have read my notes before I started this, but we're going to jump into it. Like I said, it's kind of an awkward place to jump in. It's because it's just a really sad story. And yeah, it's a sad story. I think that one of the interesting proofs of the Bible's validity, I've been seeing a lot of like Wes Huff. He's I don't call him an apologeticist. Wes Huff he's a literary scholar of the Bible, I guess, is how I would describe him. He probably describes himself a little bit differently, but that's my That's my take on him. And he, anyway, so it just made me think that one of the interesting things about the Bible is that, it tells the ugly stories too. And I think that if you have, um, you've heard it said, I don't know, most people I think have heard it said before, that history is written by the victors. And so the idea is that, well, of course, people that are writing the story aren't going to tell their ugly stories. And I think that's one of the reasons why we can trust the Bible, is that the Bible does not shy away from telling the family stories that I think most people would probably like to sweep under the rug and not bring out in the open. But here we are, Absalom and David, and hopefully we're going to try to get through Samuel 17 through 24, so the rest of Second Samuel tonight, and then we'll go on from there. What else do I need to say? There's so much, and yet mm, not really anything that I want to say, because it's been a long time. Anyways, I'm going to pray and then I'll get started. Heavenly Lord, thank you for your word. Thank you that you've blessed us with giving us your word, God. You don't hide from us. Um, you don't, um, you tell us. You tell us what we need to know. You tell us um, the truth, Lord God, and you are open about the things that are essential for us to know, and um, for us to have relationship with you. And I thank you that you've given us your word, and I pray that tonight you would open my heart. I pray for anyone who might listen, Father, that you would help them to hear your voice, God. Help them to know and understand your word as you meant it to be understood, not to take things out of context, Lord. But I pray that people would, anyone who would listen, they would search your scripture, and that they would feel the truth of your word in their hearts, Lord, and that they would seek you, and seek relationship with you. I ask this in your holy name. Amen. Okay, it's a little dark now that I turned up the light. It looks like it's bright daylight though. This is a very powerful, amazing lens, and sometimes maybe it's a little bit stronger than we really needed. Okay. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, Now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. This is wait. Hold on. Do I have the right chapter? Absalom came to Jerusalem. Oh, maybe I didn't have the right chapter. Oh, maybe I did have the right chapter. Oh no. Maybe it was 15. I didn't wind back and look to see where I left off. Okay, yes, I left off in in 2 Samuel 14. So here we go. After this, it happened that Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses, and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. So it was, whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision, that Absalom would call to him and say, What city are you from? And he would say, Your servant is from such and such a tribe of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, Look, your case is good and right, but there is no deputy of the king to hear you. Moreover, Absalom would say, Oh, that I were made judge in the land, and everyone who has any suit would come, or cause would come to me, then I would give him justice. And so it was, whenever anyone who came near to him to bow down to him, that he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him. In this manner Absalom acted toward all Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Now it came to pass after 40 years that Absalom said to the king, Please let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt at Jeshurun in Syria, saying, If the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord. And the king said to him, Go in peace. So he arose and went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the land, all the tribes of Israel, saying, As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns in Hebron. And with Absalom went 200 men invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and did not know anything. Then Absalom sent for Ahithophel the Gileonite, David's counselor from his city, from Gilgal, while he offered sacrifices, and the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number. Now a messenger came to David, saying, "The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom." So David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, "Arise and let us flee, or we shall not escape from Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly and bring disaster upon us and strike the city with the edge of the sword." And the king's servants said to the king, "We are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands." Then the king went out with all his household after him. But the king left 10 women, concubines, to keep the house. And the king went out with all the people after him and stopped at the outskirts. Then all his servants passed before him, and all the Cherethites, all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gath, passed before the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why are you also going with us? Return and remain with the king, for you are a foreigner, and also an exile from your own place. In fact, you came only yesterday. Should I make you wander up and down with us today, since I go I know not where? Return and take your brethren back. Mercy and truth be with you." But Ittai answered the king and said, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also your servant will be." So David said to Ittai, "Go and cross over." Then Ittai the Gittite and all his men and all the little ones who were with him crossed over, and all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness. There was Zadok also and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God. And they had set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had finished crossing over from the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and show both me it and his dwelling place. But if he says thus, 'I have no delight in you, here I am,' let him do to me as seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Are you not a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Amahaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait in the plains of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." Therefore Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. So David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and he wept as he went up. And he had his head covered, and went barefoot. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up weeping as they went up. Then someone told David, saying, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." And David said, "O Lord, I pray turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness." Now it happened when David had come to the top of the mountain where he worshipped God, there was Hushai the Archite coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously,' so I will now also be your servant. Then you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And do you not have Zadok and Abiathar the priest who are with you there? Therefore it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house you shall tell to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Indeed, they have here with them their 2 sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son, and by them you shall send me everything you hear." So Hushai, David's friend, went into that city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. When David was a little past the top of the mountain, there was Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, who met him with a couple of saddle donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, "What do you mean with these?" So Ziba said, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink." Then the king said, "And where is your master's son?" And Ziba said to the king, "Indeed, he is staying in Jerusalem, for he said, 'Today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom of my father to me.'" So the king said to Ziba, "Here, all that belongs to the Mephibosheth is yours." And Ziba said, "Humbly before you I bow, that I might find favor in your sight, my lord, O king." Now when David came to Bahurim, there was a young man from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera, coming from there. He came out cursing continuously as he came, and he threw stones at David and at all the servants of King David. And all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. Also Shimei said thus when he cursed, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you rogue. The Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned, and the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. So now you are caught in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man. But then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said to the king, "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please let me go over and take off his head." But the king said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse me, because the Lord has said to him, 'Curse David.' Who then shall say, 'Why have you done so?'" And David said to Abishai and his servants, "See how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life. How much more may this Benjamite? Let him alone, and let him curse, for so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing this day." And as David and his men went along the road, Shemaiah went along the hillside opposite him and cursed him as he went, threw stones at him and kicked up dust. Now the king and all the people who were with him became weary, so they refreshed themselves there. Meanwhile, Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him. And so it was, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom, that Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king! Long live the king!" So Absalom said to Hushai, "Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend?" And Hushai said to Absalom, "No, but whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel choose, his I will be, and with him I will remain. Furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? As I have served in your father's presence, so will I be in your presence." Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give advice as to what we should do." And Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, and all Israel will hear that you are abhorred by your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strong." So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the top of the house, and Absalom went in to all his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the advice of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid. And all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. Then I will bring back all the people to you. When all return, except the man whom you seek, all the people will be at peace." And the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Then Absalom said, "Now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he says too." Then Hushai came to Absalom. Absalom spoke to him, saying, "Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up." So Hushai said to Absalom, "The advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For," said Hushai, "you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and that they are enraged in their minds, like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war, and will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in some pit, or in some other place. And it will be, when some of them are overthrown at first, that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will completely melt. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore advise all Israel, be fully gathered to you from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and all the men who are with him there shall be not left so much as one. Moreover, if he has withdrawn into a city, then all Israel shall bring ropes to that city, and we will pull it into the river until there is not one small stone found there. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel, for the Lord had purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. Then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, thus and so Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and this is so I have advised. Now therefore send quickly and tell David, saying, do not spend this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily cross over, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up. Now Jonathan and Ammahaz stayed in Rogel, where they dared not be seen coming into the city, so a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go and tell King David. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom. But both of them went away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim, who had a well in his court, and they went down into it. Then the woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth, spread ground grain on it, and the thing was not known. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house, they said, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? So the woman said to them, they have gone over the water brook. And when they searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. Now it came to pass, after they had departed, that they came up out of the well, and went and told King David, and said to David, arise and cross over the water quickly, for thus has Ahithophel advised against you. So David and all the people who were with him arose and crossed over the Jordan. By morning light, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. Now, when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose and went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order and hanged himself and died, and he was buried in his father's tomb. Then David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed over the Jordan, and he and all of the men of Israel with him. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the army instead of Joab. Then this Amasa was the son of a man whose name was Jethro, an Israelite, who had gone in to Abigail the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Joab's mother. So Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Now it happened when David had come to Mahanaim, Mahanaim, that Shobi the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the people of Ammon, Mahir the son of Amiel from Lodebar, from Barzillai the Gileadite, from Rogelim, brought beds and basins, earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour, parched grain and beans, lentils and parched seeds, honey and curds, sheep and cheese of the herd, for David and the people who were with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. And David numbered the people who were with him, and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. Then David sent out 1/3 of the people under the hand of Joab, 1/3 under the hand of Abishai the son of Zeruiah, Joab's brother, and 1/3 under the hand of Ittai the Gittite. And the king said to the people, I also will surely go out with you myself. But the people answered, you shall not go out, for if we flee away, they will not care about us, nor if half of us die, they will care will they care about us? But you are worth 10,000 of us now, for you are now more help to us in the city." Then the king said to them, "Whatever seems best to you, I will do." So the king stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. Now the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains orders concerning Absalom. So the people went out of the field of battle against Israel, and the battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter of 20,000 took place through that day. For the battle there was scattered over the face of the whole countryside, and the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on a mule. The mule went under the thick boughs of a great terebinth tree, and his head was caught in the terebinth, so he was left hanging between heaven and earth, and the mule which was under him went on. Now a certain man saw it, and told Joab, and said, "I just saw Absalom hanging in a terebinth tree." So Joab said to the man who told him, "You just saw him. And why did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt." But the man said to Joab, "Though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, I will not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, 'Beware lest anyone touch the young man Absalom.' Otherwise I would have dealt falsely against my own life. For there is nothing hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself against me." Then Joab said, "I cannot linger with you." And he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart, while he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. And 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom and struck and killed him. So Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel. For Joab held back the people. And they took Absalom and cast him into a large pit in the woods, and laid a very large heap of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, every one to his own tent. Now Absalom in his lifetime had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley. For he said, "I have no son to keep my name in remembrance." He called the pillar after his own name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. Then Ahimaaz the son of Zadok said, "Let me run now and take the news to the king, how the Lord has avenged him of his enemies." And Joab said to him, "You shall not take the news this day, for you shall take the news another day. But today you shall take no news, because the king's son is dead." Then Joab said to the Cushite, "Go, tell the king what you have seen." So the Cushite bowed himself to Joab and ran. And Ahimaaz the son of Zadok said again to Joab, "But whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite." So Joab said, "Why will you run, my son, since you have no news ready?" "But whatever happens," he said, "let me run." So he said to him, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. Now David was sitting between the 2 gates, and the watchman went up to the roof of the gate to the wall over the to the roof over the gate to the wall, lifted his eyes and looked, and there was a man running alone. Then the watchman cried out and told the king, and the king said, "If he is alone, there is news in his mouth." And he came rapidly and drew near. Then the watchman saw another man running. And the watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, "There is another man running alone." And the king said, "He also brings news." So the watchman said, "I think the running of the first is like the running of Ahimaaz the son of Zadok." And the king said, "He is a good man and comes with good news." So Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, "All is well." Then he bowed down with his face to the earth before the king, and said, "Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king." And the king said, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant and me your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I did not know what it was about. And the king said, Turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and stood still. But then the Cushite came. Just then the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, There is good news, my lord, the king, for the Lord has avenged you this day of all who rose against you. And the king said to the Cushite, Is the young man Absalom safe? So the Cushite answered, May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise against you to do harm be like that young man. Then the king was deeply moved and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said thus, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place. O Absalom, my son, my son. And Joab was told, Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom. So the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. For the people heard it said that day, The king is grieved for his son. And the people stole back into their city that day as people who were ashamed and steal away when they flee in a battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried out with a loud voice, Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son! Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, Today you have disgraced all your servants, who today have saved your life, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines, and that you love your enemies and hate your friends. For you have declared today that you regard neither princes nor servants. For today I perceive that if Absalom had lived, and all of us had died today, then it would have pleased you well. Now therefore arise, go out and speak comfort to your servants. For I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, not one will stay with you this night, and that it will be worse for you than all the evil that has befallen you from your youth until now. Then the king arose and sat in the gate, and they told all the people, saying, There is the king sitting in the gate. So all the people came before the king, for everyone of Israel had fled to his tent. Now all the people were in a dispute throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, The king saved us from the hand of our enemies. He delivered us from the hand of the Philistines, and now he has fled from the land because of Absalom. But Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now therefore, why do you say nothing about bringing back the king? So David said to Zadok and Abiathar the priest, saying, Speak to the elders of Judah, saying, Why are you the last to bring back the king to his house, lest all the words of Israel, since all the words of Israel have come to the king to his very house? You are my brethren, you are my bone, you are my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, If you are not my bone, and are you not my bone and my flesh? God do so to me, and more also, if you are not commander of the army before me continually in place of Joab. So he swayed the hearts of all the men of Judah, just as the heart of one man, so that they all sent this word to the king, Return, you and all your servants. Then the king returned and came to the Jordan. And Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. And Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjamite, who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with men of Judah to meet King David. There were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him. And they went over the Jordan before the king. Then a ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household and to do what he thought good. Now Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king when he had crossed over the Jordan. Then he said to the king, Do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on that day, that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king. But Abishai the son of Zeruiah answered and said, Shall not Shemaiah be put to death because he cursed the Lord's anointed? And David said, What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For I do not know today I am for do I not know that today I am king over Israel? Therefore the king said to Shemaiah, You shall not die. And the king swore to him. Now Nish- Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet with the king, and he had not carried for his feet, trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he returned in peace. So it was, when he had come to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said to him, Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth? And he answered, My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. But he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. But my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore do whatever is good in your eyes. For all my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore what right do I have to still cry out any more to the king? So the king said to him, Why do you speak any more of your matters? I have said, You and Ziba divide the land. Then Mephibosheth said to the king, Rather let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own house. And Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rogelim, and went across the Jordan with the king, to escort him across the Jordan. But Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old, and he had provided the king with supplies while he had stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man. The king said to Barzillai, Come across with me, and I will provide for you while you are with me in Jerusalem. But Barzillai said to the king, How long have I to live, that I shall go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am today 80 years old. Can I discern between the good and bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I any longer hear the voice? Can I hear any longer the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be a burden to my lord the king? Your servant will go a little way across the Jordan with the king, and why should the king repay me with such a reward? Please let your servant turn back again, that I may die in my own city near the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant Chimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you. And the king answered, Chahim shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good to you. Now, whatever you requested me, I will do for you. Then all the people went over the Jordan, and when the king had crossed over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own place. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Himham went on after with him, went on with him. And all the people of Judah escorted the king, and also half the people of Israel. Just then all the men of Israel came to the king and said to the king, Why have our brethren the men of Judah stolen you away, and brought the king his household, and all David's men with him across the Jordan? So all the men of Judah answered, and the men of Israel, Because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense, or has he given us any gift? And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 shares in the king. Therefore, we also have more right to David than you. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. Okay, I'm going to stop there tonight. I'm going to try to stop there tonight. That's what I'm going to do. That's how it's going to be. So, today I was reading in Second Chronicles, not today, actually yesterday. I was reading Second Chronicles about David, how he came to be king. Initially, he was anointed by Samuel and Samuel the prophet, and then he went through a long period where he was in and out of the presence of Saul, who was the official king at the time. Saul knew that the Lord had spoken to him that he was going to take his kingdom from him and give it to one of his neighbors. So he was on the lookout. Saul was a the tribe of Benjamin. So he was on the lookout for someone in a neighboring tribe, which Judah is a neighboring tribe, and that's the tribe where David comes from. He's looking out for somebody in a neighboring tribe that would potentially the Lord would put in place over him. But David had many opportunities to take Saul's life and to claim the kingdom through violent means. David did not take any of those opportunities, and at the end, Saul was killed. It's a little confusing to me in the passage. It sounds like he had two things that were contributing to his passing. One was that he was struck by a random arrow in a battle, and then he ultimately decided to fall on his own sword. So Saul passed away through those means, and then after that, David was in Hebron, and all of these men from Israel went to Hebron. I counted about 281,000 mighty men. The Bible calls them mighty men. And this army, I'm rambling, sorry. Um, mighty men of war. So men who are, they were archers, they were, I guess, sword fighters, and the Bible says they were skilled in battle and gives some amazing different descriptions of different battles that they fought to earn those awards, to earn those honors that they had. But the long and short of it, whenever I was counting it up, was he had about 281,000 men who came to him at Hebron who became a part of his army. And I think that's a pretty respectable army given the size of, pretty respectable army for anybody today. I mean, in America, I read that like our current active duty army is like 450,000. So more than half the size of the current standing army in America, all volunteer force. Um, and, anyways, I just thought that was really interesting that he had such a large army and that they were all volunteer, and that it was in Hebron that all these men came and they brought all of these gifts for him. They had a big feast for him in Hebron, and that was whenever they decided to bring him into Jerusalem as the king of all of Israel for the first time. So then we have Absalom, and he decides he's at this point, I think that he already knows that Solomon has been chosen to be king, his younger brother, his younger half brother. But he decides to go ahead and make himself king. I'm going to research my notes a little bit because I found some really interesting things, commentary, thoughts about Absalom. Some of them I might share tomorrow, Lord willing. But he he decides he's going to just take the kingdom. His dad is getting older and he's just going to go for it. And so, in a sense, I think you kind of see him reenacting his father's journey to be king by going to Hebron, and then all these men are gathering to him. And then they're going to come into Jerusalem and just take over the kingdom because um, I think it makes sense. Absalom probably has a lot of residual anger at his dad that's built up over time, unfortunately. It doesn't make what he does right in the least. But I do think when you're reading the complexity of the story, I think it makes sense that there's a lot going on in that family. Anyways, like I said at the beginning, it's a sad story. One of the most amazing things about this part of the story, though, is when Absalom is killed. Joab, David doesn't want him to be killed, and he gives him specific, strict instructions that he's not to be killed. And the commander, Joab, he decides that maybe David's not making the best decisions, and he's just going to take matters into his own hand, and he kills him. And David's response is he's just grievous over his son, and he says, "Oh, that I had died in your place." And I think that that's reflective of the heart of God and reflective of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. That the heart of David is a father is he wants he's fully aware of um, his son's sin, and he's fully aware of that his son is threatening his life and the lives of everyone in his family, and he so wants him to live, and he so wants him to be okay that he would he would rather have died in his place. And I think that's the heart of God, is that God would die in our place, despite all of our sin, despite um, all of our rebellion against him, despite us usurping God and like wanting to be like God, wanting to live in the place of God, wanting to be God of our own lives, just the way Absalom wanted to be um, king, and felt that he had the right to it. And of course that was not the right thing to do, um, for a lot of reasons. Israel was at that time, it's not today, but at that time it was a theocracy, and so it was up to the Lord to choose the king and anoint the king. But anyways, I'm rambling now. So enough of the rambling. Um, Long story short, the heart of God is that He would die in our place, and this Friday, will be Good Friday, and that's what we'll remember on Good Friday, is that God came down and became man and took our place, because that's how much He loves us. So, anyways, I'm gonna let y'all go. Have a good night. See you tomorrow, hopefully. Bye bye.